I came home from the funeral with my heart slamming so hard against my ribs it hurt to breathe. I was standing on my parents' front porch, one hand raised to knock the other, gripping a thick envelope that could change all our lives. Inside, it was the truth, the kind of truth people kill relationships over. I was about to tell my family that Grandpa had secretly left me 2 working ranches and a luxury home in Los Angeles. But then I heard my mother's voice through the door, and what she said next made my blood turn to ice. I froze there on the porch, my knuckles hovering inches from the wood, my breath shallow and loud in my own ears. The house looked exactly the same as it had the day I left for basic training all those years ago. Same peeling white paint on the railing, same wind chimes clinking softly in the afternoon breeze, same front window with the lace curtains my mother refused to replace because they still work. But I was not the same person who had left. I had just buried my grandfather, the only man in that family who ever looked at me and saw more than a problem to manage, more than the difficult daughter, more than the one who ran off to play soldier. The funeral had been quiet, too quiet, a small chapel, a handful of people, no dramatic speeches, just the steady smell of old wood lilies and dust. I'd stood there in my black uniform jacket, ribbons neat on my chest hands, clasped tight to keep them from shaking. Not because I was weak, but because grief has a way of slipping past even the strongest armor. Afterward, his attorney had pressed the envelope into my hands in the parking lot. "Read this somewhere safe," he'd said quietly. I hadn't opened it yet. I already knew what it contained. Grandpa had told me everything months ago during one of our long phone calls when I was stationed states away. He trusted me with the truth because he didn't trust anyone else with it, not my parents, not my siblings, not even his church friends. "You understand responsibility," he'd said, "and you understand silence." He was right. Now that silence wrapped around me again as voices drifted through the closed front door. My mother's voice came first, low, sharp, controlled. "She's here, I saw her car." My stomach dropped. My father replied, his tone clipped in that familiar way that meant he was already irritated. "Good. Everyone remember what we talked about." I swallowed hard. What we talked about. Then my younger brother laughed. A short, careless sound. "Just don't let her get dramatic. She always does that." My sister chimed in softer but no kinder. "Do you think she'll try to take charge? You know how she gets. Acting like she's better than everyone." I felt something cold settle deep in my chest. My mother again. That's why we have to stay calm, sympathetic. If she thinks we're on her side, she'll sign whatever we put in front of her. My fingers tightened around the envelope. "Sign what?" My father exhaled sharply. "The lawyer said it's easier if she cooperates, especially with her history." History. That one word hit me harder than any insult. My mother lowered her voice further. "PTSD, long deployments, exhaustion. We can frame it as concern. We're worried about her mental state after the funeral, after the military." The porch tilted slightly under my boots. My sister hesitated. "Is that legal?" "Oh, don't be naive," my mother snapped. "It's for her own good. Temporary guardianship, just until things are settled." Guardianship. The word rang in my head like a gunshot. My brother laughed again. "Once it's done, she won't be able to touch anything without us. Makes things simpler." I felt sick. My father's voice turned practical, almost bored. "The doctor is coming tomorrow morning. He owes us a favor. He'll do the evaluation, sign the paperwork. We just need her tired, confused, emotional." There it was. The plan. They weren't just talking about controlling paperwork. They were talking about controlling me. My mother sighed the way she did when she thought she was being reasonable. "Honestly, this is better than letting her mess things up. She's never been good with money, or decisions, or family." I stared at the door, my reflection faint in the glass. A decorated service member. A woman trusted with lives equipment, classified operations. And behind that door, I was still the family liability. My brother spoke again, eager now. "Once everything's under our control, we can sell one of the ranches. Or both. The LA house alone could." "Enough," my father cut in. "One step at a time. First we secure authority, then we talk assets." Assets. They were already counting money they didn't know they couldn't touch. I closed my eyes. For one brief, foolish moment, I had imagined walking into that house and telling them the truth. Imagined relief on their faces. gratitude, maybe even pride. I had imagined saying, "It's okay. Grandpa took care of us. We're safe." I almost laughed at my own stupidity. The envelope in my hand suddenly felt heavier than steel. I could knock right now. I could confront them. I could throw the truth in their faces and watch the masks fall. But Grandpa's voice echoed in my head, steady and calm. "Silence is not weakness, it's timing." I took a slow breath, then another. When I opened the door, I didn't storm in. I didn't slam it. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I stepped inside quietly, wearing the exact expression they expected. Exhausted, hollow, grieving. My mother rushed toward me with open arms and a face full of practiced concern. "Oh, honey," she murmured, "you must be so tired." My father nodded solemnly. "Long drive." My siblings hovered nearby, eyes sharp, measuring. I let my shoulders sag. I let my voice come out soft. "Yeah," I said, "it's been a lot." My mother guided me toward the couch like I might break if she let go. "Sit down. You shouldn't be making any big decisions right now." I met her eyes and nodded obediently. Inside, something else had already started to harden. They thought I was vulnerable. They thought I was alone. They thought I was the one walking into a trap. They had no idea I was already planning my way out. I sat on my parents' couch like I'd done 1,000 times before, hands folded in my lap boots, planted carefully on the rug my mother vacuumed in perfect lines. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and overcooked coffee, comforting once. Now it made my stomach twist. My uniform jacket was folded beside me, ribbons hidden as if even my service needed permission to exist in this room. My mother hovered. She always did that when she thought she had the upper hand. She brought me a glass of water I hadn't asked for, then adjusted a throw pillow behind my back, as if I were fragile porcelain instead of someone who had slept on concrete and sand. "You look pale," she said softly. "Have you been eating?" "I'm fine," I replied, keeping my voice even. Tired but even. My father stood near the doorway, arms crossed, observing. He never hovered. He evaluated. His eyes flicked from my face to my hands to the faint scar along my knuckle. I wondered what he saw, if he saw the woman who had coordinated teams under pressure, or the daughter he'd decided long ago would never do things the right way. My brother dropped into the armchair across from me, phone already in his hand. My sister leaned against the counter, arms folded, her expression carefully neutral. We looked like a family gathered for comfort. We sounded like it too, at least on the surface. "I'm sorry about Grandpa," my sister said. "I know you two were close." I nodded. That part was true. He was the only one who had called me first instead of last. The only one who asked what I needed instead of telling me what I should do. He believed in you. My father added a note of something like resentment slipping through. He worried about you a lot. I almost laughed. Grandpa hadn't worried about me. He'd worried about them. My mother sat beside me and placed a hand over mine. Her grip was warm, firm, possessive. "Sweetheart, after everything you've been through, losing him, your deployments, it's okay to let us help." Help. That word had always meant control in this house. I swallowed and let my gaze drop. "I don't really know what to do right now," I said quietly. "I'm just trying to get through today." It was the first brick in the wall I was building, and I felt it settle into place. They exchanged looks, subtle, quick, the kind they'd practiced without realizing it. My father cleared his throat. "Did the lawyer say anything about paperwork?" There it was. I hesitated just long enough to make it believable. He mentioned some documents, but honestly it all felt overwhelming. My brother finally looked up from his phone. "Did Grandpa leave anything complicated? Debts, properties?" I shook my head slowly. "From what I understand, it's not good news." My mother's fingers tightened around mine. "What do you mean?" I took a careful breath. "There may be some outstanding taxes, legal fees. The attorney said it could take time to sort out. I might even be responsible for some of it." Silence dropped into the room like a weight. My sister's face tightened. My brother leaned back, suddenly disinterested. My father's jaw set. My mother recovered first, smoothing her expression into concern. "Oh, honey, that's a lot for one person." "It is," I agreed. My father nodded slowly. "Well, we'll need to make sure you don't sign anything hastily." I looked up at him. I thought that was my decision. "Of course," he said quickly. We just want to protect you. Protect. I bit back, the bitter smile threatening to surface. The conversation drifted after that, circling without landing. They asked about my drive, my unit, whether I was sleeping, whether I felt on edge. Each question was gentle, reasonable. Each one felt like a thread being measured for a net. As they spoke, my mind kept slipping backward, back through the years that had led us here. I remembered being 17, standing in this same living room announcing I'd enlisted. My mother had cried not with pride, but fear and embarrassment. My father had gone quiet, his disappointment heavy and unspoken. My siblings had laughed, later called me dramatic, reckless. You could have gone to college like everyone else, my sister had said. Why do you always have to be so extreme? The military hadn't been extreme. It had been structured, clear, honest. If you did your job, you earned respect. If you failed, you owned it. No guessing games, no whispered plans behind closed doors. I'd sent money home on every deployment, paid off small debts they never acknowledged, fixed things quietly the way Grandpa taught me: handle your responsibilities, don't brag about them. But in this house, none of that counted. Here I was, still the daughter who left, the one who didn't fit, the one who needed supervision. My mother stood and announced she was making dinner. My sister joined her, the two of them moving around the kitchen in familiar choreography. My brother disappeared into the hallway, already bored. My father sat across from me, studying his hands. You know, he said finally, after trauma, people don't always see things clearly. I met his gaze. What kind of trauma? He shrugged. Combat, loss, stress. I nodded. That's true. He seemed encouraged by my agreement. Sometimes it helps to let family handle things for a while. I leaned back into the couch cushion, feeling the fabric press against my spine. Maybe I said, for a little while. The trap was closing, and they thought I was stepping into it willingly. Later that night, they showed me the guest room. Same as always. Clean sheets, no lock on the door. My phone was on the dresser where I'd left it, but when I checked it, the battery was nearly dead. We'll plug it in downstairs, my mother said brightly, so you can rest. I let her take it. As the door closed behind her, I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark and listened to the house settle. Pipes ticking, floorboards creaking, familiar sounds that suddenly felt foreign. I reached into my bag and felt the edge of the envelope hidden beneath my clothes. Solid, real. They thought I was disoriented. They thought grief had softened me. They thought authority flowed only one way in this family. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and made a quiet promise to myself. I would let them believe exactly what they wanted, right up until the moment it cost them everything they thought they controlled. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay on the narrow guest bed, listening to the house breathe, counting the small sounds the way I'd learned to do on deployments vents, clicking on and off the refrigerator, humming my father's footsteps pacing once before midnight. Every sound told me where everyone was. Every silence told me when they thought I was asleep. At some point after 2 a.m, I heard my mother's voice again, low, careful. She was in the kitchen, probably with my father. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. I already knew the script. Concern, timing, paperwork, tomorrow. Tomorrow morning the doctor would arrive. I stared at the ceiling and let the anger rise, then settle. Anger was useful, but only if it didn't take the wheel. Grandpa used to say that the worst mistakes are made by people who confuse rage for clarity. I needed clarity. At dawn, I slipped out of bed and dressed quietly. I left my uniform folded, choosing plain jeans and a sweatshirt instead. I wanted to look small, ordinary, unthreatening. In the mirror, I practiced the face they expected: tired eyes, shoulders, slightly rounded mouth pulled into a thin line of grief. Downstairs, my mother was already awake, moving quickly, efficiently. She smiled when she saw me. You're up early. Didn't sleep well, I said. She nodded sympathetically. Of course you didn't. Breakfast was oatmeal, thin, watery. She placed the bowl in front of me and watched as I ate a few spoonfuls, then paused. You don't have much of an appetite. I guess not. She exchanged a glance with my father across the table. It was subtle, but I caught it. A mark on the checklist. By mid-morning, my brother and sister had gathered in the living room, all of us orbiting the same unspoken center. My phone was still downstairs, plugged in somewhere out of sight. When I asked for it, my mother smiled apologetically. Oh, honey, it's charging. You don't want to be distracted today. Distracted from what? At 10 sharp, the doorbell rang. My heart didn't race. It didn't need to. This wasn't a firefight. This was something colder. My mother opened the door with both hands, clasped, her posture radiating relief. "Doctor, thank you so much for coming." He stepped inside, mid-50s, expensive jacket, practiced warmth in his eyes. He smiled at me like I was already a patient. "You must be her," he said gently. "I'm Dr. Collins." I nodded slowly the way they wanted me to. "Hi." He took a seat across from me, setting a leather folder on the coffee table. "Your family's been very worried." "I know," I murmured. My sister jumped in. "She's been so forgetful lately. And jumpy." My brother added, "She barely eats." Dr. Collins nodded gravely, making a note. "Grief can manifest in many ways." My father leaned forward. "We just want to make sure she's protected." Protected, again. The doctor asked simple questions at first. The date, the day of the week, where we were. I answered them correctly but slowly. I let my voice trail. I let my hands tremble just enough. Then he shifted gears. "Have you been experiencing confusion? Difficulty making decisions?" I hesitated, sometimes. My mother reached out, placing her hand over mine. "She doesn't mean to, doctor. She's always been so independent." The implication hung there, too, independent to know what's good for her. The doctor nodded. "It might be wise to consider temporary measures, just until things stabilize." I looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time. "What kind of measures?" He smiled, calm and reassuring. "Support, oversight, someone to help manage responsibilities." I glanced around the room. My family watched me closely, waiting for me to nod, to agree, to hand over the wheel. Instead, I asked, like guardianship. The room went very still. My mother laughed lightly. "Oh, honey, don't use such a heavy word." "But that's what it is," I said quietly. Dr. Collins cleared his throat. "It can be framed many ways." I leaned back, letting the softness drain from my posture. Not all at once, just enough to shift the air. "I've been responsible for classified operations," I said, "for people's lives." My father stiffened. "This isn't the time." "It is," I interrupted, my voice steady. "Because you're not worried about me. You're worried about control." My mother's smile faltered. "Sweetheart, you're confused." "No," I said, "I'm clear." Dr. Collins closed his folder slowly. "I think emotions are running high." "They are," I agreed, "which is why you should leave." My sister gasped. "You can't talk to him like that." "I can," I replied, "and I am." I turned to the doctor. "You were invited here under false pretenses. There's no medical emergency, no consent, and no authority." He stood uncomfortable now. "This is a family matter." "Yes," I said, "and you're not family." He didn't argue. He gathered his folder and left without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft click. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my mother exploded. "What is wrong with you? Do you know how embarrassing that was?" I stood up slowly. "What's embarrassing is planning to declare your own daughter incompetent." My father's face darkened. "Watch your tone." I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. "Before you say another word, I said you should know something." Their eyes locked on the paper. "Grandpa didn't leave me debts," I continued. "He left me assets." Silence. 2 working ranches," I said, "and a house in Los Angeles." My brother swore under his breath. My sister's mouth fell open. My mother took a step toward me, her face already rearranging itself into joy. "Oh, sweetheart," she breathed. "Why didn't you say so?" I folded the envelope back into my bag. "Because now," I said calmly, "I know exactly who you are." They changed immediately. I had seen it happen before on base, in briefings, in rooms where power shifted with a single sentence. Faces rearranged themselves, voices softened, spines straightened. The moment I said Los Angeles, the air in the living room warmed like a switch had been flipped. My mother reached for me with both hands this time. "Honey, that's wonderful news. Grandpa always had such good instincts." My sister let out a breathy laugh. Wow. My brother was already calculating. I could see it in the way his eyes darted, the way his foot bounced. LA property alone is insane right now. My father stayed quiet, which was how I knew he was angry, not relieved. Angry that I hadn't told him sooner, angry that control had slipped. I didn't give them time to recover. I didn't give them documents. I didn't give them numbers. "I'm exhausted," I said. "I need rest." My mother nodded eagerly. "Of course, you've been through so much." That night, the house shifted. Dinner was better real chicken, not soup. The heat was turned up. My phone reappeared on the nightstand fully charged as if it had never been taken. Small comforts returned like favors. It was almost impressive how quickly they adapted. But cruelty once revealed doesn't disappear, it only learns new disguises. The next morning my father asked if I wanted coffee. He hadn't made me coffee in years. My sister offered to run errands together. My brother joked about how proud he was of me. Each kindness landed wrong like applause at a funeral. I played along. I smiled when expected. I thanked them. I let them think they had salvaged the situation. But I also noticed what didn't change. My mail didn't arrive. My mother said she'd sorted it to help. When I asked where the car keys were, my father said he'd moved them for safety. When I tried to step outside alone, my sister asked where I was going. It was subtle, plausible, deniable. They weren't abandoning the plan, they were adjusting it. By the third day the tone had shifted again, less syrup, more pressure. "You've been pacing at night," my mother said over breakfast, watching me carefully. "I couldn't sleep," I replied. "That's not healthy." My sister chimed in. "You jumped when the door slammed yesterday." It surprised me. My brother laughed. "You've always been jumpy." My father folded his newspaper. "You know, after long-term stress symptoms can come and go." I took a slow sip of coffee. "What symptoms?" "Disorientation," he said calmly. "Irritability. Difficulty trusting loved ones." There it was, the language, clinical, prepared. That afternoon my mother sat beside me on the couch, the same spot as before. She held my hand again, just like she had on day one. "We love you," she said. "And because we love you, we think you should talk to someone." I tilted my head. "Talk to who?" "A specialist," she replied gently, "just to make sure you're okay." I pulled my hand back. "We already tried that." She smiled patient. "This one is different." I stood. "I'm going for a walk." My father rose instantly. "I'll come with you." "No," I said, "I need air." He hesitated, then nodded. "Just don't go far." I walked around the block, my phone buzzing in my pocket with messages I couldn't yet answer. Each step felt watched. When I returned, my brother was waiting by the door. "Where'd you go?" he asked too quickly. "Outside." He smiled, but his eyes stayed sharp. "Just checking." That night I heard them again, whispers after midnight. My door was closed, but the house carried sound like a drum. "She's suspicious," my sister said. My mother sighed. "We have to move faster." "She knows about the property," my brother muttered. "What if she already did something?" My father's voice cut through. "Then we tighten the net." I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, my pulse steady. I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear had burned off, leaving focus behind. They were escalating. That meant time was no longer neutral. At 3:12 a.m., I slipped into the bathroom, locked the door, and took out my phone. I dialed the number Grandpa had insisted I save months ago. It rang twice. "Counselor Hayes," a man answered, voice alert despite the hour. "This is Evelyn," I said. "I need to move." There was a pause. "Are you safe?" "Not for long," I replied. "They're building a case." He didn't ask who they were. "I'll set things in motion. Trust first. Account second. Do not sign anything. Do not leave with anyone." "I won't." "And Evelyn," he added quietly, "you're doing the right thing." I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My face looked older than it had a week ago. Harder, clearer. Back in my room, I lay down fully dressed. By morning, the house would feel different again. It always did when plans were underway. They thought they were breaking me down, making me smaller, slower, easier to manage. They didn't realize they were just giving me time. Time to lock down what was mine, time to document everything, time to prepare. By the time they tried to close the door, I would already be gone. And when I left, I wouldn't be running. I'd be taking the ground out from under them. The first confirmation came 2 days later in the quietest way possible. A text message, no name, just a number. "Trust documents drafted. Awaiting your signature. Secure link attached." I read it in the bathroom with the shower running, steam fogging the mirror, the sound masking any footsteps outside the door. My hands were steady. That was how I knew I was ready. Fear makes your hands shake. Clarity doesn't. I signed digitally, then deleted the message. By the time the water went cold, the first line of defense was in place. By noon, the house had shifted again. My mother was humming in the kitchen the way she did when she believed things were under control. My father had taken a sudden interest in my schedule. "Where are you headed today?" he asked casually as I put my shoes on. "I might drive into town," I said. "Pick up a few things." He frowned. "Maybe that can wait." I met his eyes. "Why?" He hesitated, then smiled. "You've been tired." I nodded. "I'll be careful." I didn't ask for the keys. I picked them up from the bowl by the door before anyone could stop me. My brother watched, jaw tightening. On the drive, I felt that strange relief that comes when a plan finally moves. I parked outside a small cafe and checked my phone. Another message from Counselor Hayes. "Assets secured, income from both ranches redirected, LA property isolated, no one else has access." I closed my eyes and breathed. The next message came an hour later. "Background check complete. You were right to call." I stared at the screen. "Your parents refinanced their home 18 months ago, missed multiple payments, credit cards near limit. Your brother has outstanding personal loans, gambling related. Your sister co-signed." I leaned back in the chair, the cafe noise fading into the background. It hadn't been about protecting me. It had been about survival. That night dinner was tense. The friendliness had thinned, stretched too far. My mother asked if I'd signed anything with the lawyer yet. "No," I said, "not yet." My father's fork paused mid-air. "You should include us." "I will," I replied lightly, "when I'm ready." My brother snorted. "You're acting paranoid." I looked at him. "You're acting desperate." Silence. The next morning, my mother announced another appointment. "Dr. Collins is coming back," she said, not looking at me, "with a colleague this time." I nodded slowly. "What time?" 10. I checked the clock. 9:12. Plenty of time. At 9:30, I stepped outside and made one last call. "Now," I said when Hayes answered. At exactly 10, the doorbell rang. Two men stood on the porch. Dr. Collins, pale and stiff, and another man in a dark suit who did not smile. "This is unnecessary," my mother hissed as they stepped inside. "No," the suited man said calmly. "It's overdue." He turned to me. "Ms. Carter, I'm with Adult Protective Services." My father's face drained of color. A PS didn't raise their voices. They didn't accuse. They asked questions, clear ones, about access to my phone, about my car keys, about medical consent, about pressure. I answered calmly. "Honestly?" Dr. Collins tried to interrupt. He was stopped politely. By noon, the house felt smaller. By 2, my parents were silent. By 4, they were angry. "You set us up," my mother spat once the officials left. "No," I said, "you did." My brother paced. "What about the properties?" I smiled for the first time in days. "Those are handled." They demanded documents. I gave them nothing. That evening I packed. I didn't sneak. I didn't rush. I folded my clothes, zipped my bag, and placed it by the door. My sister blocked my path. "You can't just leave." "I can," I said, "and I am." My father spoke quietly. "If you walk out, don't expect help." I met his gaze. I never did. When I closed the door behind me, the air felt lighter, cleaner. I drove straight to a hotel and slept for 14 hours. In the morning, my phone rang. "Counselor Hayes again. Final confirmation. Trust is active. Assets are locked. No guardianship petition will survive scrutiny." I smiled into the pillow. They had tried to cage me with concern. Instead, they had handed me proof. I didn't go back to the house after that night, not right away. I needed space, real space, not the kind you borrow while people watch your every move. I checked into a modest hotel near the highway, the kind with beige walls and a humming ice machine that never quite shut up. It wasn't luxury, but it was quiet, and quiet felt like oxygen. By morning, the messages started. "My sister first. Can we talk my brother next? You overreacted. My mother after that. We were only trying to help you." I didn't answer. Instead, I met with Hayes in person at a small office downtown. No plaques on the wall, no unnecessary words. He laid out the timeline with the calm precision of someone who has seen this story before. They were preparing to file for emergency guardianship, he said, tapping a folder. They'd claimed concern over your mental health following trauma and bereavement. With a cooperating clinician, they could have gained temporary control within days. "Temporary," I repeated. He nodded. "Temporary can become permanent very quickly." I thought of the locked doors, the missing phone, the careful questions, the thin oatmeal, the way my mother's hand had closed around mine. What happens now? I asked. They can still try, Hayes said. But the evidence cuts the other way. Coercive control, withholding communication, financial motive. A PS involvement changes the landscape. And the properties? Untouchable, he replied. Your trust is airtight. I exhaled slowly. For the first time since the porch, since the whispers, since the word guardianship had crawled into my ears, my chest loosened. That afternoon I returned not to the house but to the curb in front of it. I parked across the street and sat for a moment watching the familiar shape of the place that had taught me how easily love could be confused with ownership. Then I crossed. My mother opened the door before I knocked. Her eyes were red, not from tears, from rage held too long. You brought strangers into this, she said. I brought professionals, I replied. There's a difference. My father stood behind her, stiff and silent. My siblings hovered in the living room, caught between anger and fear. I'm here to be clear, I said, not to argue. My brother scoffed. Clear about what? I took out a single sheet of paper, no logos, no seals, just plain language. This, I said, is notice. My mother's breath caught. Notice of what? Of boundaries, I answered, effective immediately. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I will not sign anything you present, I continued. I will not submit to evaluations arranged without my consent. Any further attempts to restrict my movement, access my communications, or misrepresent my capacity will be documented and forwarded to my counsel and to APS. My sister stepped forward. You're tearing this family apart. I looked at her, really looked. No, I said. I'm refusing to be torn down. My father finally spoke. You think money makes you right? I shook my head. Money revealed what you were willing to do. Silence spread thick and heavy. My mother's voice cracked. We're your parents. And I'm your daughter, I replied, not your asset. I left the paper on the console table and turned toward the door. Wait, my brother called. What about us? I paused. Not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted them to hear the truth without heat. I don't owe you access, I said. I don't owe you obedience. And I don't owe you silence. Outside, the sky had begun to darken. I walked back to my car without looking back. That night, Hayes called again. They won't file, he said. Not with APS watching, not with the evidence you have. Good, I replied. There's one more thing, he added. The LA property, do you want to see it? I did. 2 days later, I stood in a quiet neighborhood where the air smelled like jasmine and asphalt warming in the sun. The house wasn't a mansion. It was solid, thoughtful, clean lines, light pouring through windows that faced west. It suits you, Hayes said. I walked through the room slowly. I touched the walls. I stood in the kitchen and imagined mornings without tension, evenings without surveillance, a life where decisions were mine alone. That night my phone rang one last time. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was short. Careful. We need to talk. I deleted it. Because some conversations aren't unfinished, they're complete. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to fight. It's to leave with your dignity intact and your future secure. I moved into the LA house quietly. No announcement, no social media posts. Just a key turning in a lock that belonged to me alone. The first night I slept on a mattress on the floor with the windows open, the sound of the city drifting in cars far away, a dog barking, someone laughing 2 streets over. It felt strange, that mix of loneliness and relief, like taking off a heavy pack you didn't realize you'd been carrying for miles. The ranches came next. I flew out to see them one by one. Dust on my boots, wind moving through tall grass, hands that knew the land better than they knew paperwork. Grandpa had been right to trust me with them. They weren't trophies. They were responsibilities, work, continuity. I didn't sell them. Instead, I hired managers who knew what they were doing and left clear instructions. Fair wages, transparency, no shortcuts. Income flowed into the trust exactly as planned. Steady, predictable, safe. That word safe meant something different now. Back at the house, I set boundaries the way I'd learned to in uniform, clearly, calmly, in writing. 1 email to my family, no accusations, no apologies. I'm safe, I'm stable, I'm not discussing assets. Please respect my request for space. Any further contact should be about health or emergencies only. I didn't ask for understanding, I didn't explain myself. Their responses came anyway. My sister sent paragraphs about forgiveness and keeping the family together. My brother tried humor, then guilt, then anger. My father sent one sentence, "You've changed." He was right. My mother waited the longest. When her message finally came, it wasn't dramatic, just a single line. "We never meant to hurt you." I read it twice. Then I closed my phone and went back to what I was doing, which for the first time in a long time was choosing my own life. Weeks passed, then months. The quiet stopped feeling empty and started feeling full. I set up a small office in the spare room. I volunteered with an organization that helped veterans navigate financial abuse because it happens more than people like to admit, and because silence protects the wrong people. Sometimes late at night I thought about the porch, the door, the moment everything could have gone another way. I thought about how close I came to knocking, to handing over the envelope, to trusting people who had already decided who I was allowed to be. I didn't feel anger anymore, not sharp anger anyway. What I felt was clarity. Family isn't the people who demand control when you're vulnerable. Love isn't something that requires your signature. Concern isn't something that locks doors. One afternoon while I was sorting mail, a familiar name appeared on an envelope, my sister's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I made tea. I stood by the window and watched the sun tilt toward evening. The letter wasn't an apology. It wasn't a threat either. It was something quieter. She wrote about fear, about money, about how quickly people can convince themselves they're doing the right thing when they're really just afraid of losing comfort. I folded the letter and put it away. Maybe one day we would talk, maybe not. That decision didn't have to be made immediately, and that too was freedom. On my birthday, I visited Grandpa's grave alone. I told him thank you not just for the properties but for the lesson, for seeing me, for trusting my silence. "I did okay," I said aloud, feeling a little foolish and not caring. "I think you'd be proud." The wind moved through the trees, and for a moment that was enough of an answer. If there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's that strength doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looks like preparation. Sometimes it looks like walking away without slamming the door. And sometimes it looks like refusing to play a role that was written for you without your consent. If you're listening to this and something inside you feels familiar, if you've ever been told you're too emotional, too broken, too unstable to make your own choices, please hear this. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to ask for help. And you are allowed to say no even to people who raised you. I'd love to know where this story found you. If it resonated, leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Share it with someone who might need to hear that silence can be strategic and boundaries can be an act of love for yourself. We share stories like this every day, so subscribe if you want to keep walking this road with us. You're not alone, and you don't have to give up your power to belong.